rocking it for you this morning on Bird 365. Yes, Mac, Chad McMullen, Jody McDonald. Oh, but we got another NFL insider to join us. Eagles Nation kind of rocked yesterday with a scathing expose by the triumvirate of Eagle reporters for The Athletic, Bo Wolf, Zach Berman, and Sheil Kapadia. Kind of let Eagle Nation know that there's trouble afoot down in Eagle Land. And Sheil Kapadia of The Athletic, good enough to join us. Good morning, Sheil. How are you, buddy?
Good morning. You know, someone suggested that at the end of that article, we should have had some kind of ad for therapy or something for Eagles fans, because I think that was a prevailing theme. But obviously, we can't control that, right?
Sheil, as I just mentioned, was a combined effort, collaborative effort, to use a word the Eagles like to use, between yourself and Bo and Mr. Berman. Tell us how something like that works. How do you guys decide, all right, this is going to be such a big story, we all need to put in a little of what we know and combine and do something like that? Had you ever worked on a piece of this magnitude like that before?
I have not, no. And really it was just, you know, after the season, they fired Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz gets traded, and then you kind of take a step back. You know, we were all in Minneapolis for that Super Bowl 3 years ago. And so it's like, all right, 3 years ago, this team was hoisting the Lombardi trophy at the parade. You really felt a sense of optimism. They've got their coach, they've got their quarterback. Howie Roseman put together this roster. This team's going to be in the mix for the next 5 to 7 years. And then you take a step back and say, wait a minute, the coach is gone. The quarterback's gone. The GM is by the owner's side. The roster's in bad shape. It's a whole nother rebuild. What happened here? I mean, that was really the only question. And so we just said, hey, we all have different relationships. We all have different sources. Let's get in touch with everyone we can, and let's try to paint a fair picture of what people think actually did happen and why they are where they are right now. So that was just kind of a 2-month process of making those calls, having those conversations. One thing leads to another. And then, you kind of, some themes really surface there. And that's what's shown in the article.
Hey, Sheil, you know, you mentioned the therapy aspect of it. That's why I put on the Super Bowl 52 hat. I wanted to give Eagles fans a little remembrance of the good times. But, you know, I think the biggest part I'm hearing from fans, and I'd like to, you know, the feedback was the weekly meetings, which we knew were going on. Everybody, right. Doug admitted it, Jeffrey admitted it. But you guys kind of deep dive into what was essentially an inquisition. And I think, you know, based on the beliefs of the analytics department led by Alec Halaby, that was the most concerning part for me for 2 reasons. One, accountability. I don't think most fans even know who Alec Halaby is. Right. And 2, you know, why are you doing this with a Super Bowl winning head coach? Was that your biggest takeaway from this? And as far as, wow, what's going on here?
It was one of them. And with so many of these things, context is important, right? So people have told us other owners have these meetings with their head coaches during the week. So that was part of it. And we know Jeffrey Lurie is not a confrontational person, right? I think anybody who knows him, anybody who's watched him, he's not in there berating Doug Peterson's, you know, throwing papers around saying, why didn't you do this and this? However, it adds up. And so the big point out of those meetings, which happened on Tuesdays with Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman, and again, it's a direct report meeting there where you're explaining things to the owner, is not necessarily what happened in the meeting. It's how Doug Peterson felt after the meetings. But, you know, sources close to him who just said, I mean, he was worn down. You know, he feels like he goes on the road and beats the Green Bay Packers, a team that has, you know, 3 losses the entire season. The offense puts up 30 plus points. He's feeling good. We had a great game plan. They were playing a lot of nickel. We ran the ball with 12 personnel. Everything worked out well. And then in that meeting, he's getting asked, why didn't we throw the football more? Why didn't we pass the football more there? And so you can see how it would add up. You know, someone with a lot of experience in the NFL made the point to me that head coaches by their nature think everyone's always second guessing them, right? John, we're asking them questions every week. People in the building, they don't know who's on their side. They're getting ripped everywhere. And so that adds up. And so that definitely was a feeling that Doug communicated to people. I mean, people who spoke on and off the record mentioned that Packers game over and over again. So I don't know if Doug mentioned that to the whole group or what, but that was something that stuck in people's heads that, man, even after a big win, we're still getting that. So that was a big takeaway.
The way you lay it out, Sheil, I got to give Peterson, 2020 hindsight, some pretty good credit, because I didn't see it. Now, you guys are there every single week and asking him questions. Well, I'm watching from afar. But he seemed pretty calm, cool, and collected in his media gatherings on the sideline. Didn't seem like he let his angst show if that was the case. Now, he may have bottled it up, and it may have affected his play calling, and I'll ask you if you believe that's the case, but he didn't show it outwardly. Do you think inwardly it did actually affect his coaching?
I mean, I think it did a little, but, the fact is that not everybody was telling us this. So he wasn't like venting to, everybody in the building every day that, gosh, this is a terrible situation and I can't deal with it. So I do think after that first year, he got a good sense of, wow, okay, so this is what the head coaching job in Philadelphia entails. This is how I have to approach it. It's a little bit different than maybe I expected. Now, whether it affected his coaching, I don't think so to a huge degree. I think he knew that if he wins games and does what he thinks is right with the help of his coaching staff, that all that other stuff, he can deal with it. He can answer the questions, but if he's winning, nothing's going to happen to him. That is the ultimate job security for an NFL head coach. I mean, owners, GMs, they'll look the other way on almost anything if you're winning games. And so I think that's how he approached it. I didn't see a huge change in how he approached things given those meetings.
Sheil, you mentioned something interesting there by saying this is what the Philadelphia Eagles' job is. And I think Nick Sirianni should be paying attention to this because this is what his job is going to be. It wasn't always that way, though.
Yeah.
So where is the change and why was the change?
That's a great question. Yeah, that's a great question, John, and one that we asked people, during the sort of first, 14, 15, however many years it was with Andy Reid. It was not this way. There were, the Eagles will say, well, a lot of owners have meetings with coaches. This isn't a big deal. But the fact is, your owner did not have that Tuesday meeting with the head coach for 14 years. And so something obviously changed. Now, there were some theories that maybe the Chip Kelly era really affected them. That Jeffrey Lurie looked at that and said, wow, for that era, my influence was not heard of, was taken away. It was fully a head coaching operation after that first year where the head coach had full control of it. I think that could have certainly had an impact on how they do things. And then others had the theory that you look at the Super Bowl. When you win a Super Bowl, there's that old Pat Riley, the disease of me or the disease of more thing, right? Where everyone says, well, I'm the reason we won. I want X, Y, and Z. Now, usually that applies to players. However, someone made the case that does that apply to Jeffrey Lurie? Does that apply to Howie Roseman, where they say, look at what we did, look at how we built this roster. Look at the decisions we made that led to us winning a Super Bowl. We are emboldened to do that going forward. We have the answers for how to build this. It wasn't the other stuff. And, part of that is probably the natural dynamics of winning a Super Bowl, but that certainly could be a part of it as well.
Sheil, after reading your phenomenal piece on The Athletic yesterday, Alec Holloway became a person of interest, to use a special policing term, that I didn't know deserved the kind of attention that he did. I knew the Eagles were an analytical organization. How much, to what level, I did not know, and you guys did a very good job of painting that picture. How does emotional intelligence come out through analytics? I'm having a tough time putting that together and coming up with a this is what Jeff Lurie wants type of answer. Do those two things go hand in hand, or they fly in the face of each other?
Well, I think they need to work together in coordination to have an effective organization. And I think this is a key point, Jody, because people said to us, there are a lot of smart people in that building. People said, it's not a talent issue where they have the wrong people there. And with analytics, I'm pro analytics. I think it could really help you. But the fact of the matter is, and this isn't just the Eagles, this isn't just the NFL, this is throughout professional sports. It's not just having the data. It's not just being able to analyze it. It's being able to communicate it to everyone else in the building who might not be as well versed on it as you are. And that, to me, to be quite frank, is a failure of Howie Roseman when you look at his role in the organization. His role is to be that CEO. He's in charge of making all these different departments collaborate: analytics, coaching, scouting, Jeffrey Lurie. He's got to take all that information, put it together, and say, all right, here are the decisions we're making and why. And I don't think that's been the case there. When I think if you asked members of the coaching staff, they would say they felt like the analytics department was a deterrent for them doing the job they need to do. And that shouldn't be the case. They should have a sense that, all right, analytics are trying to help us make better informed decisions. That wasn't the case when you talk to people in the scouting and personnel department. Same thing. They don't feel like it's working hand in hand. They feel like they work to put together a draft board. They see a pick made and they think, all right, that was influenced by, the analytics department or the owner. And there's no transparency. There's no explanation at the end of it where Howie Roseman's saying, hey, here's how we made this decision. Guys, I understand you weren't on board with it. Here's why we did it. That type of thing. And this isn't like low-level scouts. I mean, these are key members of the organization who see these picks being made and are saying, all right, that's not what I thought we were going to do. So, that's a long answer to your question, but I do think that's a key. So much of this is just relationship-based. If the coaching staff feels like the GM's in their corner and the analytics staff is in their corner and vice versa, then you can have those conversations. That's how it's supposed to work. That's not how it has worked with this organization.
Yeah, and I'm glad we have Sheil here because I think you're one of the best national guys as far as working advanced statistics into your work and sort of informing people about how the modern NFL runs. But we use that word again, Sheil, transparency. Yeah. That is my biggest issue. Now, outside the building, I think it's pretty obvious, but inside the building, if Andy Weidel doesn't know what's going on, and I'm not saying it was Andy Weidel, I'm not saying it was somebody that high level or just a scout, why this disconnect has been going on for a long time. Football guys versus non-football guys. You can go back to Howie Roseman, Chip Kelly and Tom Gamble, Howie Roseman, football guy versus non-football guy. Now it seems to be Howie and Alec Hallaby versus the scouting staff. Does this end? Where's the bridge? Where is this? It's not West Side Story. I joked on Twitter. They're always against each other.
Yeah, and we'll see how the Eagles react to this. I mean, my sense is this is not going to lead to any dramatic change. What you said, John, is true. This has been going on for a long time. And I'm not someone who thinks, like you said, I'm not someone who thinks the non-football guys should be pushed out of the building. I mean, I think there are, I think in the big picture, they are smart to have this a setup where collaboration is encouraged and that you're taking input from all the different departments, but it's not working right now. It's a matter of the different factions really competing against one another. That has been the culture in the building where they're competing for influence with the final decision makers. And that's not how it's supposed to work. And so we'll see how it works with Nick Sirianni. Again, I think context is important. It's not like the Eagles have been this, huge dumpster fire for the last 5 years. They won a Super Bowl. They got to the playoffs 3 times. I would describe them as kind of a middle of the pack organization right now. Certainly during Jeffrey Lurie's tenure, they've been better than that. When you look at kind of their winning percentage, playoff appearances, those things. But at the same time, you have to look at the issues and specifically the relationships in the building and say, hey, if we're starting with a new head coach and a new coaching staff, how can we alleviate some of the issues that we had during the last 5 years?
Sheil, thank you very much. Not just for the outstanding article you guys did, but for leading me to my next question. You took me right where I was planning on going. If you're Nick Sirianni today, you're wet behind the ears, first season head coach, who's probably glad that he got the chance to jump into the big chair as quickly as he did. You read this article and you go, what have I bought into here? How does Nick Sirianni go about his business today, tomorrow, next week, leading up to the draft, leading up to the season?
Well, I did get a text from a source who we talked to for this story who had kind of a similar sentiment, but actually thought that this would be good for, Nick Sirianni to read as he begins his tenure. It's kind of a glimpse that the source thought he will know a little bit about what's worked there, what hasn't worked there, what the setup is like. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to Nick Sirianni, so I would imagine that it came across his eyeballs. I would imagine that internally there was a little bit of damage control, that this is not, that there was some discrediting of what was in the story, but I would think it would help him in the back of his mind to not be surprised by some of this stuff and know how it works.
We're talking with Sheil Kapadia from The Athletic, and subscribe to The Athletic. I think you guys are having a sale right now in advance of the NFL draft, so you can read Sheil's work along with Bo Wolf and Zach Berman. Their podcast, Birds with Friends, as well, is phenomenal. So So catch that. Sheil, I want to circle back to 2017 because that was obviously the apex of the organization. You bring up the human nature part of when you have success, people are going to say, wow, I did a pretty good job. And before you came on, Jody and I were talking about this is another flag for me. This is another alarm for me. Before the season, the Eagles wanted to fire Frank Reich and elevate John DeFilippo to be the offensive coordinator. A lot of context to that. The Jets wanted to elevate John and hire him as offensive coordinator. So they wanted to do some things. They were also doing their due diligence, as you said in their report, in case they would have to fire Doug Peterson early in the season. So how do you go from having no clue that this team was even a potential playoff contender, which I don't think any of us thought it was going to be a Super Bowl contender. But I said, hey, if Carson Wentz takes that next step, maybe they make the playoffs. You have no idea if that's about to come. Then you go on the run, and essentially you say, I'm responsible for the run.
Yeah.
Is there any other way to take that?
No, I think you're right. And yeah, 2017, that August, I came back from Seattle to cover the Eagles again. And exactly what I'm just making introductions and reaching out to people. I mean, there was no sense that team was going to win the Super Bowl. And that's not just externally, that's internally. And I think it's funny. We talk so much about windows and is the window open or closed? And the point that I always make is the teams themselves don't know when the window is open and closed a lot of times. I mean, sure, if you have Patrick Mahomes and he's in his mid-20s, yeah, your window's open. But barring something like that, you really don't know. And so they didn't know that at the time. There were doubts about Doug Peterson at the time. With the Frank Reich thing, I did get some conflicting information, whether that was more a Howie Roseman wanted Frank Reich gone. A couple people said that was more, Howie Roseman maybe than Jeffrey Lurie. So I don't have a great answer for you there, but certainly that meeting, opened my eyes a little bit. Now, we don't have exact details of what happened in that meeting, but there are reliable people in the building who we trusted, who said this really, raised some eyebrows. That I think was the Friday leading up to their opener during a Super Bowl season, that Jim Schwartz is meeting with Jeffrey Lurie for at least 3 hours. And so that caught people by surprise. It said, all right, we know Jeffrey likes talking to coordinators and assistants. We know Jim Schwartz can be a little bit chatty, but what's going on here? And there was a sense among key members of the organization that are they vetting internal candidates in the event that Doug Peterson gets off to a 1-3 start, an 0-4 start, that they're going to have to make a move here. And so it is sort of fascinating looking back at that Super Bowl season when you look at how it started and how it ended.
Your last one from me. John put the Super Bowl hat on today to show a little optimism. I tried to come up with an optimistic slant on my show on WIP last night. Here's the best I could come up with. This offseason, the biggest move the Eagles have made was to trade Carson Wentz. And I believe it was the right move. It wasn't an easy move because they had to swallow the largest dead cap money hit in the history of the National Football League. But they did the right thing. They recognized that they had made a mistake by giving Carson Wentz $120 million plus. Rather than live with it, they reacted to it and took a very tough stance to move on. So I give them credit for that. Can we think that can happen with the dysfunction within this organization? They can realize that things are going awry and astray here. We need to correct it, and we need to get back on course. If they did it with Carson Wentz, can you jump to the conclusion that they can also recognize it and do it in this situation? Is this legit half glass, half full stuff, or am I grasping at optimistic straws?
It's possible. I mean, I don't necessarily get the feeling that will be the reaction internally to this article, that it will lead to self-reflection and changes. I don't get that sense. Now, having said that, again, they've had playoff runs. They won a Super Bowl with sort of the setup that they had there. And so it's not impossible. This isn't the worst franchise in the NFL. There are things that they do correctly in terms of decision-making and that type of thing. So I don't, to answer your question, I don't think this is going to lead to significant change. However, at the same time, I don't think that they're going to be one of the worst organizations in football. So as you guys know, so much of this comes down to what's the answer at quarterback, and can that be someone who just raises everyone else up? I mean, the fact of the matter is, if Carson Wentz even is at a mediocre level last year, we're having a totally different conversation right now, right? He didn't have to be top 5. If he was like the 14th best quarterback last year, Peterson's back, Wentz is back. We're not having these conversations about the culture. We're saying, all right, maybe they can make a run this year. And so I don't know that Jalen Hurts is the guy. He's going to get a chance this season. I think really what they're doing is they'll say, all right, let's give Hurts a shot this year. We have capital to make a move after the season if it doesn't work out. And so I think we'll find out in the next 2 years what their plan is at quarterback, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Great stuff. We appreciate you coming on board with us. Please tell Zach and Bo we send our regards as well. You guys combined on a phenomenal article that gave us plenty to talk about, plenty to think about. Thanks, brother. Appreciate the work.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. Take care. All right.
Sheil Kapadia from The Athletic here with us on Birds 365. We'll come back, break down some of what Sheil had to say. Also, we got Brandon Lee Gouton coming up next hour when we'll start to get back into the draft. We'll certainly get Brandon's take on everything that was in the Athletic article. But, yes, we need to start to refocus on the draft. We have had our attention pushed to the side a little bit, but it is all moving forward with the Philadelphia Eagles. We'll help move it here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.